What is up, ladies and gentlemen, here on M Cubed? Of course, I am Schmook, and we're here to talk AMC's The Walking Dead, seasons 3, 4, and 5, arguably the peak of The Walking Dead. Now, this will be a fun episode, all right? Because I'm going to have one of my best buds, and you've heard him before, whilst me and him have been playing some Call of Duty Zombies, so let's bring him in. And we got Bob. Say hi.
How's it going, everybody?
Say hey to everyone, Bobby.
What's going on? How's your day been, Schmook?
It's been good. It's been good. I'm excited to talk some Walking Dead with you because I know, for those who know us, we talk about the show at least, I say a good amount, or at least, it's one of our things. It's one of our things. Like I know you and I have been watching it forever. And then even just like me going over to your house, we would watch it.
Every Sunday night.
All right. So what's up, David? It's good to have you here. But yeah, I know David's a big fan of the show. I know a lot are too, but so far we don't have a ton of people in yet, but that's okay. That's okay. David's enough. Right.
Better than zero.
Always, yes. Of course. Now, since you weren't here last week, I want to ask you a little bit something, Bob. Are you more of a fan of season 1 or season 2 of The Walking Dead?
Honestly, season 1.
Really?
Yeah.
Why is that?
I just love seeing like the entire city of Atlanta like broken down. In that apocalyptic sense. I just wish there was like more city-based stuff. That's one of the things that drew me towards like Fear the Walking Dead, is because it took place like in like LA.
And I feel that season 1 feels more movie quality to an extent because of that.
Right.
Like, it seems more grand scale due to having like actual like you're in like city limits and whatnot. With season 2, for the most part, you're either on a highway or you're like in the wilderness or you're on a farm. So it's like I get that. I'm more of a fan of season 2 because I love how the characters develop within that. It's awesome to meet them in season 1, but like obviously everything with Shane and Rick in season 2, I love. And the growth of Daryl from like what he was in season 1 to him becoming Rick's right-hand man by the end of season 2 is what I love. But yeah, I guess we can jump right into it if you'd like, Bobby.
Let's get it.
Okay. Well, I guess before we get into talking about season 3, which is what we're going to start with, we're going to go over some of our favorite episodes and our least favorite episodes. And some of our new characters that we really love or recurring characters that we think has a great development within the season, right? I'm curious though, based off seasons 1 and 2, who are your top 3 favorite characters as of that moment?
Obviously you got to go with Rick. I love myself Rick. I also love Shane, like the character development that he goes through all of it, and just like how much of a man he is. It's just beautiful. And then I also really like Glenn. Glenn really like finds himself.
I always knew you were a big Glenn guy. Of course, Shane, he's still in my he's at least in my top 7 characters of the entire show, even though he's only in 2 seasons and there's 11 seasons of the entire show plus 4 spinoff shows. But I love my boy Shane. But I respect the Glenn pick. On my recent rewatch of the show, I decided that he is one of my favorite characters because, like, at the beginning of the apocalypse, he's probably the character you can actually relate the most to, in my humble opinion. Because like most of these guys are cops or outcasts or whatnot. He was just a guy delivering pizzas, and he's like this whatever. He's kind of whatever about the apocalypse,
Yeah, and he has such like an interesting story in like the Walking Dead universe itself. I mean, like, if you play the Telltale games, he's also in those games.
Right.
Like you see so much of him.
Even though that is canon to the comics, not the show, but yes.
Yes.
But I agree. And then of course, he finds the love of his life within the apocalypse within season 2, which is awesome. Like just some nerdy guy who used to deliver pizzas. Like he becomes the man. Becomes one of Rick's commanders, I'd say, within the ranks, right? And then he finds the love of his life within it. So it's cool. I love that. Those are obviously three of my favorite characters. I don't think Daryl really pops off until this season we are talking about.
No, yeah, totally.
Let's see. What did you say, David? Let's see. I'll put on screen so you can read it, Bob.
15.
Ooh, okay.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Too far gone. We're definitely gonna get to that.
No, we'll get there.
We'll get there.
We're definitely we're just gonna talk season 3 first. Because we're gonna talk about some of our favorites. Spoiler alert, two of your favorites from season 3 are my two favorites from season 3 as well. So but we'll talk about it. So season 3, of course, it starts off with, we skipped through the winter. So it's a bit of a time jump. Lori's like fully pregnant, like she could be due at any moment. What I loved about the first episode is coming back, and I remember there not being a single line of dialogue until after the main credits roll. Because it's just like, it shows how like after this long winter, they're a lot more experienced now, and they go about things very differently. It shows that the Rick Tatership has really taken off. Like things are going his way or the highway, where it's like, we're doing this quiet. We're just going to go from house to house, find supplies while we can, rest when we can for Lori's sake. And one of my favorite things I loved from this opening sequence from the premiere of season 3 was when Carl finds a can of dog food and he starts to open it with a can opener, and Rick just takes it out of his hands and just throws it against the wall. And Rick's like, we're not eating that shit. We're not, right? We're not animals. We are going to find food. Don't worry. We're not starving yet. We're hungry. We're not starving. But then, of course, we get after the, the opening credits, right? Like of course, you hear that main title theme, which is, everyone knows. It's Rick and Daryl's like, they're going on a little hunt, and then they come across the prison, and Rick's eyes widen. He's like, this is it. We're going to take this over. The second he saw it, he's like, this is where we can build a life. To an extent, he was correct. But there's a lot of hardships along the way. In the prison era is one of the most iconic things of this entire show.
Oh yeah, easy.
Yeah. So anyway, so they're able to get in there. Of course, we get some Beth singing once they clear out the courtyard or whatever, right? And then they're able to go inside the prison. And by the end of the episode, we get Herschel getting bit, and there's a few prisoners, right? So that's pretty wild. And of course, we get a few of these prisoners that join the crew eventually. But of course, the group they're still very standoffish about who to allow within their ranks, right?
Honestly, like, this might be a slight of a hot take. I think that moment is when people really started to realize you can't trust anybody during this apocalypse. Like, I think that there's a few of our characters from the main group that realized, hey, they've just been in here, regardless of why they went to prison. They've stayed here. They've tried to survive in here for all this time and didn't care about what they did. But then, obviously you had some of those guys that were going to try to like stab the group in the back. And that's when Rick kind of just had that aha moment of like, nobody's can be trusted. Right. And even after like some of them started to prove themselves, he was still like, nah, I don't trust you guys.
There's a lot of factors behind that, right? So like, again, so going to episode 2, so episode 1's titled Seed, I believe. Obviously this was the seed to build like a farm, a new farm, like a new safe haven, which was the prison, right? But then episode 2 is titled Sick, where of course Herschel got bit, and immediately Rick decides to cut off his leg, right? Which I always thought was a crazy moment. Or I guess
they didn't even know if that was going to work yet.
Right. I guess he cut off his leg at the end of the episode, and that's where like all the prisoners are like, holy shit, right? But still, it's still the idea of bringing Herschel back. He's like he's feverish because he's running out of a lot of blood, so they don't even know if he's going to make it. But basically, Rick agrees to help these prisoners out a little bit in exchange for some food and potentially some medical supplies for Herschel, right? He wants half. I remember him being like, "We will take half," but Anyway, they go throughout the prison to start clearing it out. They lose the prisoners lose one of their guys. I think his name was Big Tiny, I believe.
Something like that, because he was like a big guy,
a huge guy, right? And anyway, he gets like clawed or whatever, and they just don't want to risk it. But I know it's Tomas just starts to whack the shit out of him, and that's where Rick and Daryl are starting to like give each other these looks. Like, this is where you're starting to be like, oh, Daryl is Rick's guy, right? Like he trusts this guy's opinion too, and Daryl vice versa, where Rick's even like, okay, I don't know about this guy. Then it gets to a point where they open this door, and a bunch of walkers come in, and Tomas almost like he accidentally almost like slices Rick or like hits him with something, right? And
accidentally.
And so Rick's like, okay, I get it. Shit happens. And then there, you know, of course, you get that infamous Rick stare down, and then it's just like a long pause, and then Rick's like, fuck this. Takes his machete and bam, just kills Tomas right there, which I thought was crazy, but it's like, obviously, you could tell this guy was bad news bears from the get-go. Like, this was the guy that you're like, okay, this guy belonged in prison. You could tell he was a psycho. And he was also the only one of the prisoners who had a gun, which was also kind of crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What was the name of that dude with the mustache and the blonde hair? I don't remember him.
That's Axel.
Axel, that's right.
Axel.
I think he was my favorite prisoner, even though he was like the goofiest one. I'll say goofy.
He was goofy.
He was definitely goofy. Because I remember that scene with him and Beth. He's like, so how old are you?
Yeah.
Oh, and it was like, ooh, that was like one of the moments that's just like you physically cringe.
The thing is, that's a bit of a tease into the comics version of Axel. Yeah. Where Axel, I think, is a big reason for the death of like a few people within the prison. Yeah, Mark, you're right. Bad News Bears was Rodney Dangerfield. You're right.
Bad News Bears.
But good to have you here, Mark. It's always good to have you. But anyway. Yeah, Axel, yeah, I mean, he could give you the creeps, but I think he was able to earn himself a role. I think that was an iffy thing, but I love how like Carol's just like trying to get him away from Beth. Like, she's young for you, dude. Like, get away. And then it's like, okay, he was in prison for God knows how long, just with men, but still, it's not a good look, and at all. But then
he's some comedic relief for what's been so serious.
He's comedic relief within this show, because I know there's just a point where he's like, you know, like Rick has Lori or had Lori.
At this point, still does.
He's like, maybe. I don't remember when this conversation goes down exactly, if Lori was still around or not. But I know he's talking to Carol in this instance. He's like, Glenn has Maggie. And then he goes, you're a lesbian. And then Carol's like, I'm not a lesbian.
Haircut.
you have short hair, and she's like no, and then he's like,
ain't that interesting?
And she's like, no, it's not. So yeah, he was a good piece to have within the show, in my opinion, you know. And of course, I like the other prisoner that was a good guy that would be a part of their crew. I can't remember his name though off the top of my head, but. No,
I think he was another like bigger guy.
Yeah, he was just like the other bigger black guy that. I can't remember his name for the life of me, but I did enjoy him, especially after, you know, we. I think we're getting a little too far ahead of ourselves a little bit, but
a little bit.
But you know, we're just talking about these prisoners that eventually join them. But of course, you know, we have the moment where after Tomas dies, Andrew gets pissed off, who's the other prisoner who he's like starting to take swings at Rick and whatnot, then he starts to run away. And then Rick locks him outside of the gate where there's a bunch of walkers. He's like, you better run. And you think that's the end of him, right? You think he might get mauled by walkers and whatnot. Oscar, thank you, David. Thank you. That's perfect. That was the name of the other prisoner. Great call out. I really liked Oscar as a character too. It sucks that he didn't have that much of a long stay on the show. I think he dies by the mid-season finale, which is unfortunate because I did enjoy him. I think he was starting to like really become a part of the crew, even more so than Axel in some ways, because at least he was a guy that would go out on the missions to, you know, save Glenn and Maggie and whatnot, right? But we'll get there. So again, after Andrew leaves, blah, 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 but you don't know if that threat's still out there. We find out it is. But anyway, that episode ends. You find out Herschel's okay, that apparently cutting off the limb at early enough stage will actually be able to save the person from turning. So that was awesome to find out. I just remember when this
huge news.
I remember when that when these episodes premiered, I was like, holy cow, like we're gonna lose Herschel already? That sucks, because I always liked Herschel, right? But we find out he lives, and that's awesome. But then we go to the next episode. I think it's Walk With Us. I believe that's the title name of episode 3. Could be wrong.
Walk With Me. Close.
What was it?
Walk With Me.
Walk With Me. Okay, cool. That's where you have you really get introduced to Michonne within this episode, because all we saw of her was her saving Andrea at the end of season 2. You don't even see her face. But this is where you find out that her and Andrea have been together all winter. Andrea's sick. Michonne's taking care of her. And then they run into Woodbury. But the way they find Woodbury, due to these military men crashing or whatever, and then that's where they run into.
Which, if I could be mistaken, but I think that's the first time we see anything about the CRM in The Walking Dead.
Potentially.
I feel like I remember seeing the insignia on the helicopter, but I could be wrong.
Maybe not, but that'd be a cool thing to link all the way back to season 1, that when Rick saw the helicopter, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe, but it could have just been some, army men who had a helicopter,
right?
Because at some point I think the CRM might be that would be too early within the lifespan of the apocalypse for the CRM to exist, but who knows? Anyway, so they notice all these military men who had a crashed helicopter, blah, blah, blah. And that's where you meet Merle again.
You see him again.
Who, of course, is Daryl's brother that we met in the first few episodes of The Walking Dead. And who is automatically one of my favorite characters, even from just 2 episodes in season 1. We don't really see him at all. You see him in a bit of a hallucination within season 2, right?
Right.
But this is where he's fully back. You find out he lived. He got off the roof. He has a little thing on his arm that his hand that he cut off. And so he takes Michonne and Andrea. He recognizes Andrea, of course, because she was a part of that original group at Atlanta, right? And he takes them to Woodbury, where we get introduced to the governor, who seems like this, very, I don't want to say righteous man, but very, trying to think of the right way to describe, excuse me, right way to describe the governor from this episode. He just seemed very, like, I don't even want to say regal either, but he just seemed like a good guy. He's like, that's why he's the leader of Woodbury. He calls himself the governor. But yeah, you get
for the people who did read the comics, they're like, hey, this guy might not be half bad.
Right. Compared to the comics, it's like, okay, they might be going a different route with the governor. Because like almost from the get-go with the comics, you realize the governor is a bad dude. But I know you get introduced to Woodbury. It's kind of wild to see like a thriving little community within a town this early on within the apocalypse. So obviously Michonne and Andrea kind of want to stick around. Michonne obviously has a little bit of her doubts on the governor. But by the end of the episode, we find out that the governor had the last surviving military man killed, and he has his head within these fish tanks, which of course are filled with walker heads, right?
Oh yeah, and we also see his daughter chained up.
Right. So that's where we're like, okay, so this governor isn't as good as he may seem. But anyway, that's basically the gist of that episode. It's not one of my favorite ones, but I think it's nice, to get introduced to Woodbury, the governor, knowing that Merle's back. You get introduced to Michonne.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're right. David Morrissey plays the governor. You're right, David. English guy. I think he plays the role phenomenally. But I really don't start to love the governor as a character until
season 4.
For sure, season 4. But I do enjoy what he brings to the table by the mid-season point of season 3. That's where he's starting to seem a little bit crazier. But anyway, so after that episode, we get to one of the best episodes, frankly, in my opinion, of the entire series. which is called Killer Within. Okay. This was always one of my favorites. This is one of the episodes I always go back to if I'm rewatching. Because I'm someone who will occasionally go back and rewatch the entire series, right? But it's not every time I'm gonna start up the show and just watch it from start to finish. It's a long show, but every once in a while I'll just go back and watch some of my highlight reels, right? My highlight favorite episodes, and this is one of them. What do you say, Mark? He plays Jackson Lake in Doctor Who.
He does, yeah. I've seen clips of that on TikTok and stuff.
Cool. But I did not know he was in Doctor Who. That's awesome. Mark, you always talk Doctor Who, and one of these days I might have to get on board because you're a big fan, and you seem to praise it quite a bit. So maybe one of these days. I just know there's a lot there to watch, so we'll see.
That's something I would get to eventually. I mean, I'm in a whole anime thing right now, but Doctor Who's definitely on the list.
Hell yeah. But Killer Within, this is where things start to go nuts. It seems like they were able to clear out a couple cell blocks. They seem to be thriving a little bit.
They got things down packed. They're figuring out their groove.
And I know there's just such a wholesome moment where they're all chilling outside the courtyard. You're seeing Herschel walk with crutches, right? And everyone's like, "Let's go, Herschel!" Like Glenn screams it, and then it's like, I always remember Glenn just going, "Can we just not have one good day?" Right? And it's after seeing this awesome feat that Herschel just did, right? He's walking. Not fully, but I mean he's on crutches and he's up and active.
He's recovering.
And that's awesome. But then you start to hear these alarms go off.
Yes, David, you're right. That's the biggest downside of it all. Tragic.
Oh, David, I'm with you, man. I'm with you because T-Dog is just a great. I started to really like his character this season because he was with Rick a lot. Rick and Daryl, Glenn, clearing out cell blocks. He was a badass. He had a riot shield. He put on armor. It was just cool, right? But then he sacrifices himself to close up a gate where there's walkers coming in. Once these alarms go off, he gets bit, which sucks. And then, of course, a lot of the group is separated at this point, right? They're trying to get Herschel and Beth and some of the more weaker parts of the group inside these guard towers, right? Which is obviously probably the safest place for them. It's locked up. They can be high up, blah, blah, blah.
Honestly, T-Dog's death was the one that hit me the most this season.
Really?
It was the
T-Dog hit you most.
Yeah.
I disagree, but that's okay.
It hit me the hardest this season. I love T-Dog.
T-Dog is one of the harder deaths in terms of his character could have been awesome. And the only reason he died was because apparently the actor, I think he was kind of a shit on set. He'd show up late and whatnot. So there's we got to write you off, dog. So it is what it is. But he had a good way out because he was able to, he's like, "Listen, I'm done, but I'm going to get you out of here." So he charges a bunch of zombies and he's able to let Carol escape.
Mm-hmm.
But at that point, we're also did Carol escape? Because we don't see her for a few episodes, but she's locked inside a little closet or something. But we find out she lives later on. But as no, Rick is dealing with trying to turn off these alarms. That's where he runs back into Andrew. That's where you find out Oscar is going to be "I'm choosing this group. They're good people. I'm not siding with this guy who's trying to get us all killed." But then, of course, there's obviously the humdinger of this episode that I think makes it a very powerful, powerful episode is where Lori is going into labor. And that's where you have Carl and Maggie with her. And Maggie has to perform a C-section because there's some complications going on during the labor process. And, of course, Herschel's not there, and Herschel's also not 100% either. So who knows how this would have went if nothing happened, if the alarms didn't go off, who knows?
Prison is getting overrun, all these alarms.
Exactly. So basically, Maggie has to cut her open to save the baby's life. And of course, you get that very emotional scene where Lori's "You're going to beat this world, Carl, blah, blah, blah." And then Carl has to put her down because he doesn't want his mom to turn, right?
Yeah, that set Carl on a whole path. I mean, you see it later on. It's just like, that really, I feel like it was that moment that really set Carl like on a path of either he's going to be a good person in this world or a bad person in this world. Right. Now, I don't want to get too far ahead of us in this season, but there's another moment like that comes up.
It does, where you're like, who knows which way Carl's going to go.
Right.
Of course, he's a young kid growing up in this great world. He has to put down his mom.
And he can't forget in season 2, he's the one who put down Shane.
He put down Shane, and then he was also the reason for the death of Dale within season 2.
Right.
So a lot of shit's going on within Carl's mind at this point. So he easily could have just went complete psycho, right? But yes, I do think this is one of the best episodes. Of course, we eventually get to a point where so we'll skip a little bit further ahead because we were taking a good bit of time on season 3, but season 3 is a good season. It's not my favorite of all the seasons, but it's I think it's middle of the road. It's one of my favorites.
I'm definitely going to skip to the next episode real quick. I don't want to cut you off on this one, but say the word, the next episode where Rick is going through it, finding out that Lori passed away in childbirth, not knowing his entire world was protecting her and Carl, and he lost her.
Perfect.
And it's, now his entire world is, his 2 children, but he lost the love of his life. Everything to him just disappeared.
To build off that, that's why I really love the ending of Killer Within, because that's where Rick finds out and he just breaks down. Honestly, it's a very memeable scene, but every time I watch it, I'm just like, Andrew Lincoln is going off acting in this scene, right? And of course, David just said Lizzie, which you're right, because with Lizzie growing up in this world, she went a completely different route, going a little psycho, and even kills her sister, which we will get to in the latter half of season 4 with the episode called The Grove, which is a great episode.
I will say this episode might be one of my favorites. I won't say it is my favorite, but it definitely is one of my favorites of season 3, because we see just how much this affects Rick, because all of a sudden a phone rings.
Right.
A phone rings and he starts talking to, Jackie from season 1. He talks to Jim. No, he doesn't talk to Dale. He talks to Jim. And he winds up eventually talking to Lori. He talks to Amy.
Yeah, so it's wild. He talks to the people that he's lost within his group a little bit, right? Even from the early days. So Rick is losing it because he had to kill his best friend just to decide with his wife and his son. But then he even just loses his wife, and now there's this newborn child within his life that he doesn't know is even his. So everything that he's been working so hard for, he just lost. He still has Carl, and now he has a newborn daughter, but still, it was all about saving this one person, his wife, who he decided to kill his best friend for. So it's a lot of heavy bits are happening to Rick, right? So of course he's losing it a little bit. And I know this is where we also get introduced to Tyrese, where Rick's starting to lose it too. And he sees Lori. This is where he actually full on sees Lori in a wedding dress and whatnot. He starts screaming. He's like, "What are you doing here?"
I think that's a couple episodes.
It's definitely a few episodes ahead. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just going with the fact that Rick's losing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really want to go too deep into every single episode of the season, but of course, the highlights. I found this as a highlight where it's you're getting Tyrese and Sasha, who become huge players within the gang, right? The Survivor.
Oh, I love both of them. They're both top tier characters in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I really like both the characters, right? But this is Rick sending them away to the enemy, to the governor. And that's where we get to the point where Glenn and Maggie are out on a, they're scavenging. They're looking for baby formula for baby Judy, right? And that's where Merle runs into them. He's like, "Oh, holy shit, it's a little reunion." And then he kidnaps them. Because he wants information on where they are, if Daryl's with them, blah, blah, blah.
And Michonne sees all of this.
Right. Because Michonne at this point escaped Woodbury because she doesn't want to be there. Andrea stays because she's still buying into the governor being a good guy. But Michonne, of course, this is when Merle's tracking Michonne and attacking her and whatnot. That's why she had a little bit of a limp going on right now. But she grabs the baby formula and she walks up to the prison gates, and that's where Rick sees her. And this moment alone changed his entire life.
He still doesn't trust her at this point. He lets her in just because she has the baby formula. Exactly. No other reason.
Like, why do you have baby formula? And she talked about how Glenn and Maggie gets kidnapped by some guy. I think she mentions Merle's name or something, but that's where Daryl's like, oh shit, my brother's alive, blah, blah, blah. So it becomes this whole situation where they have to get Maggie and Glenn back, and then Daryl obviously wants to see his brother again. And of course, this all is, bringing Michonne in is like the biggest thing Rick could have done, because that becomes the true love of his life down the road. And it was just like, he could just sent her away, said, fuck all. And it was the best decision he could have done. And that's how it leads to him saving Maggie and Glenn. He's able to get Merle to eventually be on their side over the governor, which is awesome. I think Merle has an incredible arc this season.
Oh, he definitely does.
He's a dick. Is what he is. But
I will say, Rick never trusted Michonne until he brought my favorite episode of the season is Clear, which is a few episodes down the line from here. But it's
we'll talk about Clear. We'll talk.
Yeah.
Oh. Hold on, guys. Can you still hear me? Whoever's still in the stream, just making sure my audio is good, because I lost Bob's audio there. Just say something in the chat if you guys can still hear me. Okay, cool. Because I know I lost Bob's audio. I want to make sure I'm still good. He might have gotten on a phone call, so we'll wait for Bob, but we can talk a little bit still. So ultimately, we just get to a crazy part where we're in the mid-season. Yeah. Good job, Mark. Appreciate you. We lost Bobby. Hope we can get him back here soon. I'm sure he's just taking a phone call, so don't worry. But anyway, we'll save talking about Clear for him, because I agree. I think it is easily one of the best episodes of season 3. Like, clearly. But of course, we get to the mid-season finale where obviously you have the survivors trying to get Maggie and Glenn out of Woodbury. You have Michonne with them. You have Oscar with them. We lose Oscar. He gets killed by some Woodbury person. Of course, Michonne is on a hunt for the governor, and that's where she's able to. She kills his daughter, who of course is a zombie, and then she takes out his eye. Oh, I think we got Bob back. So hold on.
Hey, I'm sorry I had to leave like that. I just got a job as the assistant manager at the gym. I just got offered the position, so that's why I had to take that call. Congrats, so let's go, buddy.
Congrats.
Thank you.
All right.
Catch me up. Where are we at?
To fill where you were when you were gone. I was just talking about the mid-season finale, how they're all there trying to save Maggie and Glenn. How Michonne kills Penny, who's
such a cold scene. It's so cold.
And then I just know whenever she stabs him in the eye, I just always ooh. I'm just oh boy. Here, we'll put that in the chat for you. Congrats, Bob.
Thank you, David. Thank you.
Yeah. But when she stabs him in the eye, it's crazy to me. He's just so down bad because one, he just lost his daughter to him, how he sees it. And then he just lost an eye. It's crazy. But of course, Andrea comes in, so Michonne's not able to kill the governor. And then, of course, by the end of the episode, we see that they were all able to get away. They were able to get Maggie and Glenn. And then, but we find out that Daryl got left behind. And then we get to the gladiator pits, which obviously is such a weird thing that Woodbury does. They have walkers and people fight each other. It's wild. But you have Daryl seeing Merle again for the first time in a long time. First time ever that we're seeing it in the show. Because we never saw a scene with them together within season 1. And then, and then that's the mid-season finale, right?
I love how in that scene, in the biter pits, as they call them, it's even after all this time, Merle and Daryl still have that like unspoken communication between the two of them. It's like, I'm not going to betray you, and like, figure out a way to get out of this situation together.
They're brothers.
Oh yeah.
But I know that's when, like, with the premiere of the midseason, that's where you have Merle's like, I'm a part of you, Woodbury. I'm with you. And so she starts kicking Daryl's ass, but then obviously the rest of the gang comes through and saves the day, right? And this is where there's a lot of, from this point on, there's a lot of controversy within the group because they're able to save Merle, save Daryl, and Glenn wants nothing to do with Merle being with the group because of what happened with between the governor and Maggie, where the governor got her to take off her shirt.
Right. And Michonne doesn't even want Merle there either.
No, of course, because Merle didn't torture her, but, went after her, hurt her, blah, 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 right?
Oh, yeah.
So that's just wild. So Daryl's like, listen, I'm going to go with my brother. And Rick's like, what the hell? It's like, it's your decision, but I mean, we're family too, man. So it gets to a point where there was like this whole sequence where it's Daryl and Merle, like they save some family that's getting attacked by walkers. And then Daryl's just like, I need to go back to my real family, man. And Merle's just like, they don't want me, man. They don't want me. And it's crazy, but it's like, we're going to make it work. And they're able to make it work there for a little bit. Like they have Merle in like a different jail cell. And it's like, it's good. And they have to realize that they need more numbers to go up against this governor because a war just started with what just went down with Woodbury.
Oh, yeah. And this is the moment that the prison is really like, we have no shot at defeating Woodbury. Like we had a surprise attack on them, but after seeing them like up close, we're outgunned, outmanned, all this stuff.
And they know where they are.
And they know where they are. And so now it's time for them to like be like, okay, we need to go get more weapons. But how are they going to do that, leaving the prison defenseless? And that's why Rick decides to take Michonne with him because he doesn't want to leave her there. And he wants to protect Carl, so he takes Carl along with. And they go all the way back to where Rick knows he didn't take all the guns. Back to what we see in season 1, like the police station, where him and Morgan took some guns out of there, and they find Morgan. I love this kind of thing that they do in shows. Is just like they stumble upon characters that they've already introduced.
I agree.
I think within the entire Walking Dead universe, I would have Morgan as like number 2 or 3 of all the characters for me because Morgan's entire storyline, even throughout Fear, is just such a great story in my opinion. And I love seeing Morgan there. And Carl was the one who shot him. Carl was the one who knocked him on his ass, knocked him out.
Right.
And Rick's like, no, we can't kill him. I know him.
Without him, I don't find you.
Right.
So, yeah, Clear is a great episode. And it's wild because it's like it's showing where Rick can go if he lost Carl because obviously Morgan lost his wife just like Rick did. So Rick's already starting to lose it. But he's seeing a visual representation of what his life would be like if he lost his son too. So this is where Rick's starting to find a little bit of like a way past him going a little bit nuts, right? Because he's witnessing it like right before his eyes, like this is what I'm becoming. And it's great to like all have it be Morgan, who's the person who saved his life in the very first episode of the entire show, who taught him the ways of the new world. Yeah, amazing episode. This is where also you get, it's just Rick, Carl, and Michonne on this little adventure where you get to have that bonding of this new family that's eventually going to come down the line where, of course, Michonne ends up being like a mom to Carl. And of course, is a mom to Judy and, of course, RJ down the line. So it's great to see this from like this episode. This was a true beginning of that family.
Oh, yeah. And I think this is the moment where even though Rick doesn't trust Michonne, Carl does. This is like, Michonne, I won't say sneaking her way into the family because that's not what she's doing, but definitely like they became best friends in this episode.
This is where Carl's like, I think she's one of us. He's like, and Rick's like, you think so? Like, I do. So, I remember Michonne was just like freaking out a little bit about this little cat statue she found or whatever it was, right?
No, yeah, she's like, I wanted to go back in there anyway. I saw this and I just had to take it.
She's like, I thought it was too damn cute or something that she said.
Yeah, something like that. And then they still came back with the crib. That's great. And Carl did all that just for a photo of
and Lori. Dave, I'm with you, man. Harry's being too flaky for the world. He was never going to make it, but he was just, I wouldn't say flaky. He was just a good guy. He was just a good guy. So he was going to bite it eventually. But
speaking of that, I think we should jump forward into season 4. So we can get to like that juice of season 5, because I really want to hit that.
I agree. I just want to hit a few more topics on season 3 first. Specifically, This Sorrowful Life, which I think is one of the best episodes of the season. This is where Merle's like fully like going on a suicide mission to prove himself that he belonged with the survivors. Like, I am one of you. And this is where he goes and like he ambushes a bunch of the governor's men. So he was able to take out a good amount of the fighting men of Woodbury. He almost would have killed the governor, but he got caught. And, of course, this is where Merle dies. And I think this ends with one of the most emotional scenes within the entire show, where Daryl comes, he's tracking his brother. Because originally this was going to be where Merle was taking Michonne back to the governor as like a trade to try to stop the war, because that's what the governor wants is Michonne. This was even hard for Rick because after Clear, Michonne was starting to become a part of the group, right?
Easy, yeah.
But of course, Merle's like, screw this, go back, just go back home. So he of course, he lays out a trap, but then he dies. But of course, we get Daryl finding his brother as a walker, which is just heartbreaking. This was a scene where I'm starting to realize Norman Reedus is a damn good actor. Because he starts breaking down, crying. He can't put it down his brother, but he does. And there's a lot of emotions going on within that scene where he's taking out his brother, where he's stabbing him repeatedly, and it's like there's a lot there. It's like, once his brother who looked after him, but also made his life hell at times. So again, I thought it was a great episode. And then basically the last thing I want to hit on with season 3 is that the finale is, yes, you lose Andrea, who was a big member of the group from the beginning.
Oh yeah.
But it's just so lackluster how like this is not where the war ends. This is where the governor kills a bunch of his men and then he just kind of disappears.
Right.
So I thought it was very anticlimactic of a season finale.
It was. And, I really liked what they did in the comics with it. Obviously, Rick loses his hand in the comics. Andrea doesn't die in the comics. But what they did with the show is a little bit confusing for me, because it's like the governor wanted to move Woodbury to the prison. And it was like, you have a whole community, something that people feel comfortable with, like an old what civilization used to be, and you want to take all these people and then put them into cells. Like, I don't know what he was really thinking about that there, because it wasn't what he was just telling people, because there were definitely scenes where it was just like the governor's inner circle where he's like, I want to take the prison, and his people were like, what, you really think these people are going to want to live in cells? Like, but and it was definitely, I kind of would argue that it wasn't anticlimactic when the governor just snapped and was like, Woodbury's done. All these people who were going to help me shot them all, killed them all. I don't think that was anticlimactic. I think that was just like a tipping point. It was also telling us that the governor's story isn't over. And which brings us into season 4, where it gets crazy. Like, we think, at least, like, without getting too far ahead of myself, we think the governor's gone.
Oh, for sure.
Which, in all intents and purposes, he's gone.
He's gone. They could have never brought him back, but he is oil that changes everything within the show. It's kind of good. It's kind of a good thing they didn't end this season that way. But I do think by not giving this season a very satisfying ending is what brought season 3 down a lot for me. because ultimately I do think this would have been one of the best seasons. Because I think there's so many episodes in there and great storytelling that I'm just like, this is one of the best, and it's early on. But I just think just by having a somewhat lackluster finale, it just really brought it down. But by having this lackluster finale, we will be getting one of the best episodes in television history within season 4. So, but hey, Carrie, glad that you're here finally. What the heck? We've been going for 45 minutes. But no, but I'm messing. We've only talked about season 3 of The Walking Dead, so we still have 4 and 5. So stay tuned. So before we get off season 3, I just want to ask you, Bob, and you guys who are still watching, I want your favorite episode of season 3, and I want your least favorite. And out of 10, how would you rank it? Because for me, I would say it's hard because I really love Clear. I really love It's a Sorrowful Life, but I think Killer Within is definitely an episode I go back to a lot more. So I think that's my favorite episode. I think there's so much that goes down within this episode. It has one of the most heart-wrenching endings to any episode, where Rick finds out that Lori didn't make it. So that's my favorite. And my least favorite would be, I think it's the episode titled Prey. It's almost an episode I almost always skip on rewatches. It's just when Andrea leaves Woodbury and the governor's tracking her down. It's like not a bad episode. It's just one I don't love. It's just one that I think is very skippable. You can just know in your head that Andrea she doesn't make it to the prison. She gets captured, and that's what leads to her death in the finale.
I would say that my favorite was Cleared. I just love bringing back that old character, seeing how he's changed. And then, Rick passing out. Oh, hi, Ash. Passing out that olive branch to Morgan, saying like, hey, come when you're ready. Just come with us when you're ready. And I love seeing, Rick going back to his roots kind of in that episode.
I'm with you.
But my least favorite episode, I would probably have to say the first one of season 3. Just getting everything together, getting everything ready. It's called Seed.
Yeah,
but it's just like
I love it. It's one of my favorite premieres. But all right,
it's just a personal opinion. I was, I wanted it to hit the ground running a little bit more. Maybe I don't know.
Fair enough.
That's just me. And then I think the question I was going to ask you is: we had a lot of new characters come to us in season 3. What character was your favorite? And I'd say that my favorite is probably Sasha.
Okay.
Just because, or Sasha, it's a tie between Sasha and Tyrese, quite honestly.
Sure.
Just because.
I mean, those are great picks. Obviously, those are characters that are on the show for a long time after this, specifically Sasha. Tyrese still lasts a good amount, though. It's hard because the governor, I just think, is one of the best villains in TV history, though. It's hard not to pick him. But I've just always been a sucker for Tyrese. All right, he's just a good-hearted man who doesn't belong in this world. And of course, without him, Baby Judy doesn't make it.
I'm kind of surprised you didn't say Michonne, quite honestly.
Technically, we got introduced to Michonne at the end of season 2, so
fair.
The technicality, I'm not going with Michonne, but she would be, because Michonne's one of my favorite characters in the show. But yeah, I'd say probably the governor or Tyrese, because the governor, again, he's just one of the best villains within the entire show. But yeah, as a whole for the season, I think I'd give it a solid 7.5 to an 8 out of 10. But yeah, Killer Within, I've seen a lot of Killer Withins. I like that Carrie gives it a 9 out of 10. That's a high rating for the season. I know season 3 for a lot, it's a big fan favorite season for sure.
Oh yeah.
I know this was like a start of this show becoming like what it was going to be. Just one of those, like, you have to tune in weekly to watch. I know this is when I started to watch it week to week. So yeah, awesome season, guys.
So right now, if I would have had to place it, we're going off the first 3 seasons here.
Yeah, sure.
I'd say season 1 is my favorite, then 3, then 2, honestly.
So for me, I'll do the same thing. 2 still my favorite. The 3, then I think I go 3, then I go 1. But I love every one of these seasons.
Oh yeah.
It's hard to rank them. There's just Shane getting so much character development within 2 is why 2 is my favorite. I just love that ballad between 2 best friends, and how this world has changed them and put them against each other for control and power. and protection of the people they love. So, Carrie, you like 231? Man, we have the same rating, girl. Oh, and David. I love it, guys. I love it. So we're all in agreement. Bob, you're the outsider here.
Hey, it is what it is.
All right, but I guess we can get into season 4 a little bit, huh?
Let's get it.
We can make the beginning a little bit quick, get to Too Far Gone. But overall, just with the big highlights is with the premiere where you have I think it's called 30 Days Without an Accident or something like that.
Yeah.
Of course, like they're starting to live very peacefully within the prison. Like they're making a farm. They have these pigs, so they're starting to like the breed.
The Ricktatorship is over.
Dictatorship's over. They have a council now. They're giving Rick just a step back to just farm, just like come at peace. Make sure your son doesn't go too far gone, like how you almost did. Because at the end of season 3, Carl kills a kid, right? Mm-hmm. And then, of course, also at the end of the season 3 finale, Rick brings in all these people from Woodbury, and that's why the prison becomes a flourishing community, right? And then Rick's like, I made it happen, but he's basically retired now. He's like, it's not up to me anymore. So that's the big thing, is that Rick is no longer in complete control. There's a council which has like Herschel on it. It has Carol. I want to say Glenn's on there. But yeah, they just have like Sasha's on the council as well. But basically, there's a sickness starting to spread, right? Which it's just just some flu, which really attacks everyone's respiratory system, where like they're coughing too much, even coughing up blood, where they can't breathe anymore. And so people start to die within the prison, so they start to turn, and that becomes a big problem. So they have to have a whole isolation area. That's where this is where Herschel's getting so much of time to shine this season and throughout the entire show, where he's like the doctor just trying to help everyone. He doesn't care what happens to him. Yeah, I see that being like the big thing within like the first 3-4 episodes. It's just like trying to deal with the sickness, which I think is a fine arc. I don't think that this is what makes season 4, but I think you get a lot of good stuff, specifically with Rick, like just trying to teach Carl that we don't have to be in charge. We just have to do the farming. Herschel obviously doing all this stuff medically. So I think it's good stuff. It's just nothing incredible. But of course, thank you, David. I was about to get to this point. This is the big part of these first few episodes, is that to try to stop this sickness, we have someone kill 2 people within the prison, one of which is Tyrese's girlfriend, Karen. And
I was going to mention, before we get into that a little bit, is you can't forget that Carol was doing a group for the kids, saying it's story time or whatever, but really teaching these kids survival skills.
Right.
Because she knows that it's not going to pass the council to do this, and parents aren't going to want their kids to do this thing.
Right.
So she took it upon herself to start teaching kids, how to defend themselves, how to survive, which also goes back to a point that David made earlier, saying that this is when we see rats starting to appear, like skinned, and somebody's feeding walkers rats.
Right.
And we find out that it's Lizzie, because
she's a little
she's a little psycho.
So I mean, and yeah, so that's the cool thing about this like first like quarter of season 4. It's like this kind of mystery. There's like a mystery going on, like who killed Karen and David, I believe was his name. But of course, like
David's right.
So yeah, so they were trying to think of like Tyrus is like, what's up with these rats and whatnot? Is this connected? So Rick has to play a little, but he has to put on his sheriff's badge a little bit and try to figure this out. And he asked Carol, "Did you kill Karen and David?" She goes, "Yeah." So, and then we get a really cool moment where Rick's like, "I'm taking you out of here," and and to her, she's like, "Are you trying to be the leader again?" He's like, "No, because I don't think you're safe to have around my children," which I think is cool. So he's like, "I'm doing this for me, not for everyone. But also, if you stay there, Tyrese will kill you, and you are family to me, but I just can't have you there anymore." Mm-hmm. So those are all the highlights. Then of course we get to the point where the governor comes back, where we get like these flashback episodes. That's where you get introduced to Tara, of course, who becomes a big character for a while.
Oh yeah,
like she's in the show for at least 5 more seasons, which is wild. But Yeah, but she is the sister to this girl that the governor's starting to see and like, and kind of become the adoptive father to this girl's daughter. So now this becomes like
Megan.
Megan, yeah. And this becomes like his newfound family. And like, and to me, I can see that the governor has kind of turned a new leaf. I think he realized he was going a little psycho. I actually don't think any of this was really a big play. I actually think he was trying to actually like find a home for his new
I
family.
mean, there was this whole montage that the governor had that he went back to Woodbury after it was abandoned, and he starts burning it down. Like, I think we actually do see this change in character from him. I think the biggest thing that happened for him is he became addicted to the power. I think that he wouldn't the power is what changed him, and I saw that happen when he's burning down his old house or whatever. Um, and we see him hit like rock bottom. He grows out all of his facial hair. He just didn't care about his own life anymore.
Right, and I think he truly, again, I think he really did turn a new leaf. Which I think when I rewatched this show recently, I started to really appreciate these episodes more. I remember when they were premiering, I didn't really care that much, but I do like that. It's really showing that like the governor's like, okay, I'm past this. Like the power got to me. Now I found people that I really care about. But then he runs into a new group that the leader is Martinez, who was like his right hand man that wasn't Merle at Woodbury.
Mm-hmm.
But then he kills him, and then he kind of brings on this whole big group, and he's starting to get that power again. It's like, all right, we got to find a safer place. There's a lot of
All
us.
because Martinez offered him some power. Like, do you want to be part of my inner circle? And he starts taking control again. He didn't even want it.
Like he doesn't. He's like, I don't want to be not your guinea pig, but I'm not going to be below you. So that's all it took. That's all it took. So he kills Martinez, and he becomes the leader again. And he's like, I know a place that could keep us safe. And that's where he winds up at the prison with this new group who has a tank. And that's where we get to one of the best episodes in television history, Too Far Gone.
Make it together. We're not too far gone.
This is where we get so many amazing things. I don't even know where to begin with this episode.
It's a great episode. Best episode of the season.
The illness is about done, right? Obviously, Glenn's still feeling it a little bit. You can tell that some people are still feeling it, but all that starts is that I know Rick's about to tell Tyrese who killed Karen and David, but then you hear, and then Rick was going to tell Daryl about Carol, that he took her somewhere, blah blah blah. But then you hear like this big explosion, and so everyone races outside, and that's where you just hear the governor goes, "Hey Rick, we need to talk." And then Rick's just like shaken up because again, he's not the leader anymore. So he goes down, he tells the governor this, right? He's like, "I'm not in charge anymore. We have a council, blah blah blah." But
tries to make things happen peacefully.
He wants to go about this without zero bloodshed. And basically with Herschel being his mentor, specifically in this season, about being like how I want you to farm, I want you to come back to earth a little bit. He sees that Michonne and Herschel are both at the feet of the governor, and he has to try to do whatever he can to get his people back. So he's just like, we can all live together. We're not too far gone. And this is one of the best monologues within any TV show. I think this is one of Rick's best speeches. It's true. It's like, listen, like we've seen what we could become. We've been there. I've seen it from you and you've seen it from me. We both lost it a little bit. And I think it works with what we just saw from the governor, right? How like we see how he's finally has actually turned a new leaf a little bit. But of course he has gone too far.
He relapsed.
And Rick, he knows what he has here. He has a safe haven for, of course, his newborn too, and a bunch of other people that he took in. But the governor, again, he's too far gone. That's why he goes liar, because I've seen it from you that you're nuts too, dude. And I don't want my family with you either. So that's where he goes down, takes Michonne's sword, and cuts off Herschel's head. which is one of the most jaw-dropping scenes in any TV show, where you lose one of arguably the heart and soul of this show at this point. And this is what begins the end of this war, with the biggest battle where
we lose the prison.
We lose the prison. The prison era is done. And we lose, of course, we lose Herschel, who's obviously the biggest death of this episode, him and the governor, because the governor dies at the end of it too.
Until this point, the entire show's been about building the group, building, and this episode just completely shatters everything that they've done for the show up to this point.
Right.
I mean, everybody is split up. Maggie is, by herself, or she runs into, who does she run into afterwards? I don't remember.
She's with Sasha and Bob.
Right, she's with Sasha and Bob.
Bob is a new character this season. I really talked about that.
Glenn is now with Tara, who she becomes a fan favorite character because she doesn't want to be doing what the governor is doing and doesn't want to kill.
I really like that within this episode, where Rick's even like, he's like, so this is what you want? Is this what any of you want? He's like, you and the pigtails. Like, he could tell that she's like, I don't want to be a part of this. Like, this guy's
right.
Like, he could tell then, and that was always great. But again, like, you're right, that this, up until this point in the show, they were actually starting to build something that could flourish and like grow within this broken world. And then it just all gets wiped out like that with one swing of a sword, where you lose a lot of people. The prison gates get broken down, where it's lost. They lost the prison, and they also lost everyone, because for all they know, it's just Rick with Carl, Daryl's with Beth, Glenn. We don't find out if he's alive or not until like the next episode or whatever, a few episodes on the line.
Right.
Tara, and then of course we get introduced to a few other fan favorites, but we can hold off on that for a second. Yeah, everyone's split up. Everyone's
on their own,
and that's
why. I don't
know
if you said this already, but Rick is with Michonne and Carl.
Well, again, like, he's originally just with Carl, but he's able to run into Michonne, which is like, it's not like after the farm where it's like, at least they all had like a place where they knew they could meet up, which is like where they left like a sign for Sophia, right?
Right.
And so for all they know, it's like, we're never going to see any of these people again. And that's where we get into the second half of season 4, where I think is arguably one of the best half seasons in all the entire show. I really like I remember when it was coming out, I wasn't like a huge fan of it, because I know it's just like, oh, the group split up, so you're gonna have to focus on certain individuals each time. And of course, I love seeing Rick every single episode that I came in. But of course, anytime we got Rick, I thought we were getting masterful television, because of course, first episode after Too Far Gone, where it's just Carl and Rick. Carl's saying how you failed everyone. Rick's like nearly on his deathbed. He can barely even breathe.
Like Jiggy Jar Jar do. Dirty, dirty, dirty. The bad lip reading for the episode.
Right.
Anyway.
But Carrie, I hated losing Herschel too. Like, trust me. Like, he was a hard one to lose. Truly,
Herschel.
Really one of the fan favorites of the entire show. But he had to die. He had to, because that's where we get the group to go to where they're supposed to be, which in this case was all roads weren't leading to Rome. They were leading to Terminus. So at least they were able to actually be like, okay, so they see these signs being like, those who arrive survive. So they're like, all right, this might be our best bet to find everyone. David was a fan of that, Bob. David was a fan.
Thank you. I thought it was pretty funny.
But of course, with the second half of the season, of course, we get some of the best episodes of the entire show. That's why I really love season 4. Like, I love season 4. We get some of the best episodes all around.
You also see some in-depth stuff. I mean, like, with all these people being separated, it allows them to dig deeper into each of the characters.
Right. You get more personal stories.
Yeah, we see exactly what this does for Michonne. This sets her back to before, like, even helping Andrea in the first place. Like, she goes back to having walkers on chains because she's by herself. that's obviously an incredibly hard thing for her to do.
Yes,
She runs into Rick and Carl, who are sitting at a house.
Right. I just know what the second she saw them, that's what I love about that's like the ending of the episode 9. I don't remember what that episode's titled, but again, I know it's just the Rick and Carl episode basically with some Michonne stuff. I just know it's like a knock at the door, and Rick's like freaking out a little bit, and he's like, "Carl, get back." And he looks through like the peephole, and I just love when Rick just drops to the floor laughing, and Carl's like, "What? It's for you." And it's great. I think
it's great.
It's a great moment.
It's fantastic.
It's fantastic.
But I also really like the storyline in which we see this never-ending back and forth that happens between Glenn and Maggie, where both of them are just, when they're not together, they're just focused on being back together. Like Tara is trying to use like sense to help Glenn, be like, "Hey, yo, we can't do this. This isn't going to be the best chance for us to survive." And Glenn's like, "Do what you want. I'm doing this."
He does not give a fuck. I'm finding my wife.
Which leads us to some of the best characters getting introduced.
You get introduced to 3 shot at the end of that episode with Tara and Glenn, right? You get introduced to Abraham, Eugene, and Rosita, and it's epic. And I love how it's like when we get into more of that storyline where it's like Glenn, Tara, and those 3, where Abraham tries to tell Glenn that we have a guy who knows how to stop this, who has the cure. And Glenn's like, "Whoa, I still need to find my wife."
Yeah, I was like, "Cool, you guys do that. I'm gonna find my wife."
And then but Abraham respects the shit follow also, and that's what's great about Abraham. It's like this whole time it's been Rosita and Eugene following him. He's like, okay, like I fuck with this guy. And then of course, we have Maggie doing the same thing with Bob and Sasha, just trying to find Glenn. But of course, all roads are leading towards Terminus. And, but Maggie is in an interesting state, right? Where she just lost her father, she lost her husband, and she lost
her sister. Doesn't know where Beth is, which
so Maggie's in a very shitty spot where it's like she's only with Sasha and Bob. And this is where it gets to a good point where it's like, oh, Maggie and Sasha build a very good friendship within like their episodes, which is great. Which all comes back to it comes around eventually in season 5. How like no matter what they've lost, they both have lost key people in their lives. So there was always like a good connection between Maggie and Sasha from this point on, which I always enjoyed. But of course, Sasha and Bob start to build a little bit of a romance within these episodes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess that's really it. Besides, the Daryl and Beth stuff is great. I really like the episode where it's just them.
And they burn after she has her first drink and just like the middle finger going up.
Yeah, it's just one. You don't expect these 2 to ever really have this much screen time together alone. That's like how Beth's like, fuck this. I just want to have a drink. We lost so much. Let's find something.
I think this also like really humanizes Daryl because we haven't really seen him get over the death of his brother
right
at this point, and so he's still holding that burden, and then he takes the blame for a lot of what happened.
He does.
He always takes a lot of stuff like it's my fault, I could have done more, whatever, even though he threw a grenade in a tank. We forgot to mention that, but yeah,
epic.
He did that.
Epic.
Yeah, I thought they were going to hook up too for a hot minute. I honestly did.
A lot of us did.
But then we also see him like completely break down.
That's what Carrie just said.
No, that's why I said it, because I pulled up the comments so I could see him too.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
But no, and then we see him after he's like, start to forgive himself for everything that happened. We see Beth get kidnapped.
Yep.
And that just destroys him.
And now he's alone now too.
And he's alone, but not for long. Not for long.
That's where he meets the claimers, and he's like, listen, they have their rules, and it's like it's not much, but something, because he had nothing. He couldn't just be out on his own.
No.
Especially after all he's been through with like a family. He's like, he needed people. But these weren't good guys at all. But then, of course, these guys they go to the house that Rick and Carl and Michonne are staying. Rick kills one of them and takes his jacket. The infamous murder jacket, of course.
Infamous jacket.
But they're able to escape. And then, of course, they're all on the road to Terminus still. But this is where... Which one was episode 12, David? I'm trying to remember.
Still. It's called Still.
Is that the one that's with Beth and Daryl?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it was the worst, but I still really enjoyed the episodes with Daryl and Beth because, I mean, again, I think it made it very humanizing between the two characters, and it's good to look more into these characters' psyches. That's what I really enjoyed about the second half of season 4.
I feel like Beth really humanized Daryl, like brought him back from like a brink. You know, I mean, for most of those episodes, he was just like quiet and he's just like, do what you want. Like, you know.
Right. I agree. But
I will admit, out of all these amazing episodes, at least in the second half of the season, that might be my least favorite.
Sure.
So,
sure. So I'm not against what you're saying, David. It's arguable for sure. But anyway, then we get to, so of course Daryl's with the Claimers and their leader's named Joe. Their rules are just like you find something, you claim it. It's simple as that. You lie, you're going to be punished. You steal something that's not yours, you're going to be punished. It's simple, you know, it makes sense. I get it. But then it gets to the point where we get to one of the most this is arguably my favorite, probably, I think it's like 5 to 10 minutes long, this sequence. It's where the Claimers roll up on Rick, Michonne, and Carl.
Right. And before we get there, I do want to like just catch up a little bit because we did skip a couple episodes here where it was like with the group of Maggie, Bob, and Sasha. Maggie leaves them in the dust. She has that map determined. She leaves without them. And Sasha's like, yeah, good. Let her go. You know, she's just focused on this. So we have to focus on ourselves and survive. And then Bob, we really see him become this foil of a character that is like, no, like, you know, we need to stick together. It doesn't matter what we're doing as long as we're together. And really changes Sasha's point of view and goes along with Maggie and helps her do this. Signing, you know, Glenn, I'm going to Terminus, Maggie, like writing on the signs so that she goes.
Right. And then before we get to the Claimers as well, I guess I did miss one of the most important episodes of arguably the entire show.
We see that Jude is alive.
Yeah, we see that Judy's alive. We see that Tyrese is with Lizzie and Mika. And then they roll up with Carol. Tyrese tells Carol everything that happened.
Mm-hmm.
But this is where Carol tells Tyrese about Karen. Lizzie kills her sister because she's like, don't worry, she'll come back.
Just see.
But look at the flowers, Lizzie. Look at the flowers.
Look at the flowers.
So unreal episode. The Grove is a truly remarkable episode of this entire show. It's very much so like a horror movie in a way. It seems like, I just remember Tyrese being like, we could make a life here. This is a nice little cabin. Like we have a little.
Why do we have to go back to it?
Right. So it's a good episode. I'm a big fan of it. Oh, you just watched The Grove today, David? Good shit, man. Good shit. Here, we'll put that on. Yeah, The Grove.
I can see the comments. I have the chat pulled up.
I understand. It's for those who watch this later on, Bobby.
Oh.
Yeah.
I got you.
Come on now.
Now we can do the Claimers.
Okay.
One of the best scenes. I'm sorry, like Too Far Gone is the best episode, but this has one of the best scenes in the entire show. Yes,
Too Far Gone is overall the best episode. But I think this episode's titled A, right?
No, that's the last episode of the season. I think the one that we're talking about is in 15 called Us.
I think this scene is within A. Because I think Us Us is where you get to know a little bit more about the Claimers. It's like where Daryl's like rolling with them a bit more. I'm pretty sure A is like this scene happens and everyone makes it the Terminus, and then that's where you get like the whole you're screwing with the wrong people and whatnot. You know.
Okay, yeah. Then in Us is just when people start to reunite, like Glenn and Maggie.
Right, that's a great moment. Yeah, you get Glenn and Maggie's reunion. It's awesome. That's where you have Sasha, Bob, Maggie, Glenn, Tara, Eugene, Abraham, Sasha, or Rosita. So it's great to have all these characters meet. Of course, I just love all the small stuff between like Abraham and Eugene and whatnot, where Eugene's like firing a gun and ruins their truck and whatnot. Eugene's like Eugene's self-sabotaging the whole mission just like to get Glenn to Maggie in some way because he knows that he's full of shit anyway. So he's like, might as well help this dude find his wife. So yeah. Anyway, so to the claimers and Rick Grimes. This is where you have the man become an absolute animal for the first time, truly, because this man has lost too much. This is where he's releasing his inner Shane. Because at this point, this is where the claimers, they have a gun to his head. They have a gun on Michonne. There's a knife on Carl's neck. Some dudes even just
trying to rape Carl.
Trying to rape Carl. This sick dude. And Rick just feels absolutely powerless here. And like he even tries to like headbutt the dude, and the gun goes off. So he's like has obviously a loud ringing in his ear because a gun just went off right next to him, and he throws a punch.
Neck off.
Of course, he first throws a punch at Joe. Does almost nothing to him because Joe's a big dude. He's a pretty big guy, and so he just grabs Rick, and he's like, "What are you gonna do now?" And then Rick just bites his fucking throat out, and that's where everyone's like jaws basically drop, their eyes wide, and they're like, "What did we just witness? What did this dude do?" And that's where. Of course, Rick sees Daryl, and like, of course, there's the whole point of like Joe's being like, "You say this is good people, but obviously this dude killed one of our people, so that's a lie." So obviously his dudes start to beat up on Daryl. So Rick's seeing like so much go on where like Michonne's about to die, Daryl's about to die, Carl's about to die. Three of the most important people within his life are about to die. So he has to do something that seems unimaginable to the human mind. Is to literally bite another dude's throat out. And he does that, and then he goes up to the dude that's trying to rape Carl, and he's even like, "Listen, dude, I'm sorry, I'm done. I'm gonna go." And Rick's just like, "He's mine." And he just takes a knife and just puts it in his gut, and it just brings it all the way up to his chest. I'm like, this is dark. So dark.
So dark that like Carl, even though he was just traumatized by this experience, like Michonne's just holding him, just like, "Don't look," like, watch. And every like knife impact that we hear, like Carl's like flinching at it because he has not seen his dad go feral like this ever.
He's watching the man who raised him lose it just to save his life, though. So it's wild. Then he could be just thinking in his head, like, "Is my dad going to be okay after this?"
Right.
But yeah,
how's this going to change things?
I agree, Carrie. That I loved every single second of this because I'm like, this is the Rick Grimes that I know and love, because this is the one who's going to stop at nothing to save the ones he loves. An absolute man. But then we get one of my other favorite scenes within the entire show. It's when it's just Rick and Daryl sitting beside the car where Carl and Michonne are trying to get some rest. And
my brother.
And Daryl's just like, "Listen, man, like I was with them." And Rick's like, "I don't blame you, dude. Like you had to do it." And then Daryl's like, "What you did back there, anyone would have done that." And Rick's just like, "No, not anyone. But you coming back here right now, that's everything. You're my brother." And it's like, that's one of the best scenes within the entire show. It's like, I needed you here, and you showed up. You were there. So epic scene. And then they all go to Terminus, and they realize that these people are kind of sick puppies, as David just called Carrie for enjoying that. But hey, come on, David, you know you love that. You did.
It's such a great moment. I mean, how when Schmook and I are at the bar or whatever, we'll just look at each other sometimes. We'll be like, "You're my brother."
My brother. Yeah, exactly.
It's such a heartwarming moment right there, being reunited with each other.
We just saw one of the most traumatizing shit. Like it just comes back around where it's like, "Listen, you're my brother." Like the things you would do for those you love is what that whole scene was. Like sometimes you have to go to the darkest pits of your own soul to save those you love.
And like, so, and then moving forward from that a little bit, like you said, now they're in Terminus, but Rick, Michonne, Carl, and Daryl, they're the last ones to arrive. They don't trust. They bury a bag in the
didn't
woods.
go through the main entrance. They went
Yeah,
over.
no, they buried a bag in the woods. They went in through the side because new people. They don't trust them.
Rick always thinks a few steps ahead.
Right, and then they get stopped. They're doing everything, and Rick just looks around, sees a poncho, that Glenn. Yeah, sees the pocket watch, sees the backpack, sees the riot armor, and then it's like
it's all around. So it's like he's like, oh, okay, where'd you find all this shit? Where are our people?
Right.
Like, I don't know what you're talking about. We found it.
And then a firefight ensues.
But then they start getting shot at, but they're obviously just being led. The bullets aren't being aimed at them. It's just like obviously they're getting pushed in a certain direction. And then they wind up at this one car, but they meet Gareth, and he gives everyone nicknames like the leader, the
samurai,
the kid, the archer.
Yeah, the archer. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. But then they wind up in the train car, and that's when you hear Glenn go, Rick, and that's where the whole family is back together. And this is the peak of the group, the peak of the survivors, and that's where
they're gonna feel pretty stupid when they find out.
They're gonna feel pretty stupid when they find out that they're fucking with the wrong people, which is
God. I wish that's what it was.
And that's what if you bought the Blu-ray, it plays it that way, which is sick. I wish it was like that on Netflix, but on honestly I want to say the theatrical cut, but the one that was aired on television, they're screwing with the wrong people, which still hits. It hits.
They do that a couple of times, like with that scene, and then later on you see it again with Negan.
Yeah,
but
yeah, they're fucking with the wrong people. Hits a little harder. And then that's the season finale. And so season 4. Bob, what's your favorite episode? Do you have
Too Far Gone? Do you even have to ask?
Yeah. It's hard to say. To me, Too Far Gone, yes, it is. But I really love A. A has so many good scenes. Like we were talking about it quite a bit there. Like Too Far Gone, like is like it's the best show for television as a whole. Like just like, oh, there's a lot of action in it. There's like insane moments. You get a lot of like character deaths. Just with A, it's like it hits a certain like heartstring for me, where it's like at times I could say I like it more than Too Far Gone, but I won't go there. But
I'll say even the reason that I think Too Far Gone is the best episode, maybe of the entire show, is because it also takes that part where it doesn't just break the characters up, it breaks the show up. So we see that like even for the rest of the season, it's focused on individual stories. It's the show itself is broken up into these segments that we see.
Too Far Gone is arguably the most important episode of the entire show. So I get it. It changed everything. But yeah, what do you think there, Bob? Because I have not personally really watched Fear. I watched it like in the beginning. So Nick would be my favorite character from what I've seen. But
God, I have seen all of Fear except for like the most recent season. I was waiting for it to like come out on a streaming service. I think my favorite character might be Alicia. Yeah, I think it might be Alicia. Just everything that she goes through, especially in the most recent season, even not like the ending of the show, but the season before. I think a lot of her storyline was good. John Dory, he's a badass, but
maybe I'll have to watch it at some point.
You do. I don't think I think you're gonna want to skip through some of the parts. I forget the one duo's name, the trucker and the guy in the wheelchair. I think his name begins with a W. I can't remember it. It's on the tip of my tongue. Wally, maybe? I don't know. But that duo of characters, I really like their relationship and what they got going on.
So, saving a little bit of time, we'll save on Fear, but for you guys watching, what's your favorite episode? What's your least favorite episode? How do you rank the season as a whole? And is there a new character that we get introduced to that's your favorite? For me, the new character, obviously my favorite new character is Abraham. There's no doubt about it. Abraham's just a badass. He's funny. He's a great comedic relief, but he kicks ass, so he's awesome.
I would say my favorite character is probably Rosita.
I love Rosita.
I mean,
Trust me, I love Rosita.
She's beautiful. She's badass. I mean, she's also my favorite because of the character development she goes through throughout the rest of the show. Everything that she like faces.
Right.
I think that's
Rosita's a great character. Don't get me wrong.
yeah.
And then Eugene I like more than Rosita, but just at this point in the show, like being introduced to a new character, Abraham is by far my favorite new character.
Right.
Yeah. All right, I guess we can get into season 5.
Season 5.
Great choice, David. Eugene's great. I love Eugene.
This season, the first like you were talking about like season openers. This season opener.
This is the best season opener. There's no doubt.
This is it.
No, yeah, you're right. There's no doubt about it. This and maybe the pilot to the entire show. I think those are probably the best. But anyway, so No Sanctuary is the title of the premiere to season 5, and it's a killer episode. There's a lot of action. You show Rick being a complete badass. It's the whole group together escaping.
Do you remember this moment from the season opener though, when they're all lined up on the slaughter floor?
Right.
The first guy that gets the bat is the guy that Rick and Carol tried to help in season 4.
He's the guy that Rick gave his watch to also, and that's why he's able to get his watch back. And Carol saves the day, gets his watch, gives it back to Rick. So it's a lot of good shit there.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't catch that the first time I watched.
You didn't catch that? No. Yeah, I remember catching that because I just remembered recognizing the actor also just because he played the Penguin on Gotham. So it's like I was able to recognize him. I'm like, oh shit, okay, so he was in the season before in that one episode. So yeah. Of course, you get some cool shit there. You get where people's throats are getting sliced open. Obviously, you find out that these people are cannibals, most likely due to this. And then you have like almost an instant of Glenn getting his head bashed in by a bat, which is a little bit of a foreshadowing moment.
Thank you, David. Sorry.
Yeah.
That was gonna kill me. I was just gonna eat at my brain until I could figure it out.
Right. These are the characters Bob was thinking of in Fear the Walking Dead. But then I love that Bob is the one trying to like convince Gareth, like, hey, we have a guy who has the cure. We can fix this. You gotta let us go. And I just remember when like the Comic-Con trailer came out, like they did a lot of stuff with the trailer to make you think that Gareth was gonna join the group and whatnot. So they did a lot of misdirection within this trailer specifically. But anyway, where was I going? Oh, I just love the whole scene where Gareth's like, hey, you locked something in the or you buried something out of the woods. What'd you bury? He's like, oh, blah blah blah, guns, whatnot. And then a machete, a red handle on it, and that's what I'm gonna use to kill you. Badass, unreal line. Like Rick is obviously like his ego is ginormous at this point in time. Like he knows they're getting out of this. Like he just knows.
I mean, if you remember, like even like we're jumping a couple seasons ahead, like Negan finds a videotape of Rick not too long after this instance, and he's like, "Who's that guy? I do not want to mess with that guy." Mm-hmm. And that's the Rick that we're seeing right now.
Right, we're seeing the Rick Grimes that's like absolutely feral, top of his game, where he is gonna do this is pure leader Rick, where he's not like going insane. He's still going a little. He's obviously letting out his like craziness, but it's not like season 3 where he's starting to lose it, you know?
Right.
He's giving into his Shane like ability, where it's like this is how you're gonna survive in this world. But obviously they get out of Terminus, mostly because of Carol. Honestly, all because of Carol. And so you get a great moment at the end of this episode, which is great, where it's like the reunion with Carol. He's like, Rick's like, was this you? And so then they have a good hug, and it's like he's more than happy to have her back with them. And then Carol's you have to see something.
Right. And this is what we were talking about earlier when David said something about Tyrese, being such a good guy. We see just like the extent and like the emotional turmoil that he goes through when he's watching Judith because he couldn't do what Carol was doing, and he's watching Judith, and the guy from Terminus comes in, puts his hands around Judith's neck, was like, you leave, or otherwise the child dies. And the zombies are hitting on the door and everything. He goes out and he just like throws them down on top of a spike just to save Judith's life.
And he starts beating the shit out of this guy.
Yeah.
He doesn't kill him either, which is also a problem.
He says he's not going to kill him.
Yeah.
But it does come back for him.
So anyway, so Rick goes to where Tyrese is, finds out that Judy's alive, which is great. Very awesome moment. This is where we finally have the entire group back together at the end of this episode. And then when the episode ends, and then you get a nice, kind of like a little after credit scene. And that's where you get to see Morgan. Morgan is on their trail a little bit. So it's like, okay, they're hinting that Morgan will eventually be a part of the group, which is awesome. Of course, Morgan's one of the best characters of the entire show. And honestly, I remember seeing this live. I'm like, holy shit, he's back.
The best characters in the entire universe.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So it's like, it's great to see that he's on his way.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, so the next episode's good. It's just where you meet Gabe, who becomes one of the best characters, honestly. He just sucks for a little while, in my opinion. But he eventually becomes a very great character within the show. Not a whole lot happens. They go to some store or whatever, and there's just some... who's that, Abigail?
That is Abigail.
Hey, Abby.
She woke up from a nap.
Oh, yeah. We're just doing our little show. We're almost done. Anyway, but then we get to episode 3, 4 Walls and a Roof, right?
Another great episode.
Banger episode. Like, it's wild that we're getting like these many great episodes, like almost back to back, you know? This is where The Walking Dead was at its peak. I know this is when like the audience was huge. I haven't seen many of the web episodes, David. I know
I've seen a couple of them. I really distinctively remember one of the web episodes about that first walker that Rick sees after he leaves the hospital.
Yeah.
The one that's like cut in half. I remember seeing her story, but
I think at this point in the show, it might have been this, or it might have been season 6 where they started doing like the flight one, where it's like it was at the beginning or the end of each episode, they would show like a little sequence, and it would eventually become like a full episode about like the outbreak happening on like an airplane, which is really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've seen some, not most, but I'd be into looking into them. But anyway, 4 Walls and a Roof, that's where you find out that, well, Bob gets kidnapped by the cannibals. They chop off his leg and they eat it in front of him.
You're eating tainted meat.
You're eating tainted meat, because we find out Bob got bit in the past episode. But then they all come to the church, and that's where, of course, you have the epic. Well, even this might have been in the episode before, but I want to hit on this a little bit. I just love how it's like Abraham trying to convince Rick to like go to Washington. Like, let's. And
he's down with the plan.
He eventually gets down with the plan, because he's like, whatever, we're all together now.
They're going to fix it by bus at the church.
Minus Beth, though. Beth.
Right.
So Daryl starts to tell Rick about Beth and whatnot. But also within 4 Walls and a Roof, that's where Daryl and Carol actually see a similar car that took Beth. So they start to track that. They track it all the way back to Atlanta. But again, of course, Gareth goes into the church. And that's where you have like all like the sharpshooters together. Yeah, I think Rick shoots off Gareth's like 2 fingers, and then it basically becomes just a massacre within a church.
And just looks at Gareth pleading for his life, and he's like, "Well, I made you a promise." Takes out the machete with the red handle,
right, and starts destroying Gareth. And that's where it's just you're seeing where this group is at this point. Like they've all lost a lot, and they're starting to lose their humanity a little bit at this point too.
Mm-hmm.
This is where the group's starting to become truly feral. We don't really see them come back until the second half of the season. But basically, the rest of this first half of the season is them trying to find Beth. So you get some Beth episodes, which I don't love.
I disagree. I really like it. I mean, I have mixed. Actually, I'll change that. I have mixed feelings about these episodes.
I mean, they're fine.
Because
I like the
we
intro.
do get introduced to everybody ate Chris.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Who's a good character, no doubt. I just don't really love this plot line. I do like it once like the group's in Atlanta and like Rick's like he's like I was a cop and whatnot, stuff like that. Um, you get some badass scenes with Rick, but then the finale of the mid-season is great, where it's like, oh, like okay, we're having this deal, we're getting Beth back, it's all gonna go down smoothly, but then I believe it's Dawn who's like the leader of these cops and whatnot in this hospital, right? She's like, but I want Noah. Like Beth kind of was filling in this role as my ward, right? But because Noah was that, but you guys got him from us, so I want him back. No, like this wasn't part of the deal, but Noah's like, it's fine. I appreciate everything you guys were doing, but I'll do this. So they're about to get Beth back, and then Beth has to go and stab Dawn, and she shoots her in the head. Kind of an unbelievable, just quick death of one of these fan favorites.
Dumb. It's so. Uh,
See, and so David, you're kind of right. Beth was not a great character overall. Again, I liked her with the like her and Daryl arc. I thought that was good, but she did start to get interesting when she came back into the show.
She was a boring character. But I will say that the hospital episodes, like, that really hit home for a lot of people because especially like, you know, a big part of the show is showing how these groups and communities like change because the world ended. And it's like, you know, you have, you know, the policemen and then the wards, and those are the only two like groups of people that they have there. And you know, I think we kind of skipped over the fact that Carol got abducted too. She was in the hospital too,
right?
And Beth saved her life because they were just going to let her die or something along those lines. But Beth saved her life, and you know, it also was such like the reason that it sticks with me and why you know you need to bring it up is like just how disgusting a lot of these policemen were. I mean, all the women wards got abused in that hospital. And it's like, you know, that's why Beth really wanted to make that change. She, like, you know, I feel like that's probably why she stabbed Dawn right at the end before she died.
There. She wanted
right.
So yeah, I mean, I think Beth started to become a good character, but I think they killed her off just for shock value ultimately.
Right.
Just to keep those ratings up, because I feel like the ratings went down a little bit with these episodes after getting some absolute banger of episodes within the
yeah. So no, it has to happen.
So yeah, and so that's why I kind of agree with Carrie here. I just feel like they could have done something else. They could have kept Beth alive, but it all goes towards the whole trauma that Maggie goes to, and that continues with her character development that goes throughout the entire show.
A little fun fact here is I remember watching some kind of interview that Norman Reedus or I think Emily Kenny, I forget which one of them was talking about it, but during the scene where Daryl's carrying her out of the hospital, they were talking about it, and it was something like Emily just couldn't stop laughing, and then Daryl was getting tired of like carrying her because it was like her actual body, and Daryl's like, oh, it's getting heavy, and like Emily's just laughing the whole time. I thought it was a little funny tidbit.
Yeah, no, that's funny because I mean that also just adds to like just when like Carol or Daryl's like carrying her out of the hospital, and then Maggie sees her because she's like, oh, they got Beth. And then just to find out that she died, like she never got to see her sister again post the prison. So like to her, basically, she lost her father and her sister on the same day, which is heartbreaking. Because she never got to see her post that. So it's crazy. But she had that optimism that she was still alive. But it just got all taken away. So yeah, that was the mid-season finale. The mid-season premiere I remember being pretty good because that's where they're trying to get Noah back home. They find out that his hometown got overran, that his brothers are dead or his family's dead. But then that's where Tyrese gets bitten. You have this whole episode like him like hallucinating. You get to see Lizzie and Mika. You get to see the governor again. You get to see Bob again. I guess I forgot to mention that Bob died from his bite, but I mean that was clearly what happened.
I think we also did forget to mention here that I think it was actually an episode. I think it was actually in episode 5, Self-Help of this season. Or something early on anyway, was we find out Eugene was lying
Right.
About the cure, and Abraham knocked him out.
Yeah, that definitely happened at some point. It's because Rick was going to go with them, but they knew that where Beth was and that they had Carol too, so like they had to go there. So I know Glenn and Maggie agreed to go with them, but that's where Eugene lies, and that's where like Abraham and Maggie and them decided to meet up with them at the hospital. So that's So that was some stuff that we missed, but yeah, Eugene lied. But so anyway,
that's why they went back to the church.
Oh, I agree, David, but we're not there yet. That's in season, or maybe, no, that is this season, ain't it?
It is this season, because in episode 11 or 12, they get to Alexandria.
We'll get to that point. But Tyrese dies, but then we see the group truly on the road. They're like, fuck it, let's still go to DC. Maybe there's something there. It's where where our government was. Maybe there's some safe haven there. So like, fuck it. But then
we see them back like they were in the beginning of season 3, end of season 2.
Right, they're more on the road. They're hungry though. We see them eat dogs. This is where the group's really feral. They're running low on water. They're malnourished. But that's when they run into Aaron, who's telling them about Alexandria, which becomes one of the biggest, most integral things within The Walking Dead.
Something different. I just lost my zombies progress, but it's fine.
Did you really?
I didn't realize my PlayStation's in rest mode now. So,
Bobby.
Tragic, but hey, it happens. I will say, I did want to mention though, one of my favorite scenes, or one of my favorite scenes in the season, is when they are on the road. They find a barn, hunker down during the storm that like passes right over them.
Right before they meet Aaron.
Right before they actually like meet Aaron.
Right. Rick just tells the story of his grandfather, and he just goes how his grandfather was in World War II. It's like, all right, get up, you're dead. Blah blah blah. It's like, we are the Walking Dead, and
we are the Walking Dead,
which is a crazy scene. But Daryl's like, no, we're not them. And then Rick's like, no, we're not. But this is how we keep fighting until we make it home. Just get up. You're dead now. Keep fighting. But yeah, then they meet Aaron. Rick's obviously very hesitant. Obviously, after everything they've been through with like the claimers, Terminus, the governor, it's hard to trust anyone. So I take this very seriously. I just remember this is one of my favorite things. It's like Rick asked Michonne, it's like, what do you remember hearing when we walked up to Terminus? She's like, nothing. Right. And Rick's like, nothing. Like, I hear nothing. But then basically once he's able to trust Aaron and they get to the gates of Alexandria,
they hear laughter.
He hears laughter.
Children playing.
It's playing, yeah. And that's where it's like his eyes just kind of like widen a little bit. And I just think that's a beautiful moment because he's like, okay, this is something we might be able to survive in.
But this brings the group to face an entirely different challenge. They're so like, they've built up so many walls over the years, like having people to earn their trust and all these things. Now they're going to have to learn how to live in what resembles a community where people in said community have never had to experience life in the apocalypse or like very little of life in the apocalypse. And so now it's this whole new challenge of like, what do we bring for them? Like, we've survived out here. Like, how can we just forget all that's happened? Daryl still goes out, it's an entirely different challenge for these characters.
And that's where they find roles for all of them, like jobs and whatnot. And it's just interesting to go back to like how things were, but still like being post everything that they've overcome. But of course you meet Diana, who's like the leader of this community. I love her like taking these video recordings of like, Rick, like talking about what they've been through. I like how Carol's pretending to be like this like helpless like mom. Just trying to be like under the radar, which is obviously high IQ.
Making cookies. the sleeper agent, if you will.
Right.
But I will also say, like, as I was to build off of what I had just said, is like Glenn and Noah, they're going out on the raiding party, and you have it's not Spencer, it's the his older brother that winds up dying. I can't remember his name because he was only in like an episode.
All right,
but
they're not important. Spencer's the only one really like important, but.
And then you had the one that with him, the other guy from Alexandria. They go out, the four of them.
I can't remember his name either, but he's like the one that Glenn's like he despises.
Yeah, Glenn hates him because he's a coward through and through. He's a coward.
Right.
They've always kind of made a game out of being out there, but never took it seriously. Glenn's trying to have him take it seriously, and he won't do it. And so when they go out with Eugene, because I'm kind of building off the death scene that David had brought up,
right?
They go out there to this facility, and this coward saves his own skin, leaving Noah to get devoured. Which one of the best jokes of the entire show that came out afterwards is everybody ate Chris.
Yeah, when they did, they did.
It was disturbing.
This was to the point in the show where I'm like, holy shit, like. What are they able to even show on television? Because I mean, this is like a TV, like they can't even say fuck on this show at this point. But you're able to see this dude get like absolutely mauled, like face ripped open, and I'm like, holy shit, Nicholas, thank you, David. Yeah, that's the name of this guy, this coward guy that him and Glenn
terrible
at odds ends. But yeah. But anyway, but Rick and Michonne become constables here, which are like basically like cops. And Rick meets this girl that he's starting to be fond of, who has 2 kids and a husband. Starts to find out this husband might be abusing all of them. But before I get into that, one of my favorite moments of this part of the show, well, one, they're trying to get used to like this way of life again, right? So I remember Diana like invites them to a party. And it's just interesting. Well, I guess before even this, I love the whole moment of like them coming here and finding out that they have like hot showers and like they're able to finally clean themselves up. Like I remember when it takes a shower for the first time in ages. It was crazy to see how much dirt comes off his body. And then him like finally shaving his long ass beard. It's crazy. And like. And it's like, I've never seen you like this before. And then Rick's just like, yeah, I haven't seen myself like this before and after. It's nuts. But anyway, then they go to like some party, and I just will always remember the scene. It's just like, Abe's like, I don't know if I can do this. And then Rosita's just like, well, they got beer. And Abe's just like, I'm going to try. And it's just, Abe has so many of the best one-liners within this show. Kills me. But anyway, Rick's starting to investigate a little bit more so into like what's going on with this new girl that he's kind of into, that her husband might be beating her. And then we get this incredible sequence of him like confronting the husband, who happens to be like a surgeon, or like no matter what, he's the most medical, like
Pete's his name.
Yeah, Pete's like the most medical guy there, so it's like it's hard to like kick him out of this community. But Rick doesn't like the guy for many reasons, especially since he's into this dude's wife. But he's like they have a little bit of a fight sequence going on. There's so many new characters we get introduced to. Also, like this point, like we haven't really talked about Enid at all, who Carl's starting to take a little bit of interest into. But anyway, we just get this whole sequence where Rick throws Pete out the window, and that's where like the whole city of Alexandria is like surrounding them. And then that's when Rick pulls a gun out, which they're not supposed to have. And he's like, we got to control who we let in here. And then like this
Jessie, that's her name. I was sorry.
Who?
Jessie.
Thank you. I was blanking too on her name. But
for some reason I wanted to say Anna, and that wasn't right. But
no, yeah, but thank you, because I could not remember her name either.
Enid is the next Beth.
Yeah, Enid's not the best character. There's no doubt about it.
It seemed like to me, like side little rant, it's like they almost couldn't decide what they wanted to do with her character.
Right, they kind of want to make her that adopted daughter to Glenn and Maggie a little bit, but they didn't really go that far with that route. Because I know a certain character like that within the comics.
Then it's like, oh, it's a love interest for Carl. Oh, now she's too old to have like a love, to be like considered a kid. It's it's like they didn't decide what they wanted to do with her character.
Right, because then they eventually, like when we get into time jump, she becomes like the doctor of the group a little bit too. But anyway, so basically now after this whole situation with Rick, they're trying to figure out what to do with this group as a whole, specifically Rick. So they're having like a little bit of a trial, and like a lot of people are just standing up for Rick, like Abraham specifically, being like, "This is a guy I would follow into war," like basically.
And this is when Morgan comes back.
Well, not quite yet. This is where we have Pete come in.
Oh yeah.
Pete comes in like he's drunk as shit. He's like, "We need these people out of here," blah blah blah. Then he ends up killing Diana's husband, who's the one who built up the walls around Alexandria. So he's like a key component to this community. Kills him, and then Rick comes in, and Diana just looks at him. He's like, "Rick, do it." And without hesitation, bam, done. And then out on the road, Daryl and Aaron found Morgan, and Morgan winds up there at a terrible time to see Rick just murder this dude, and leaves here, Rick, and then Rick looks up, gives a little head nod, and then that's the end of the season. And
yes, he did.
But yeah, I love the second half of season 5. Like I think season 5 started off unbelievably strong with like No Sanctuary, Four Walls, and a Roof. But then I do think the best storyline brought it down a little bit. But then once we get to the second half, when you see the group getting fully feral, like they don't know if they're gonna make it, and then they get to Alexandria, which opens up a completely new chapter to the life of the Walking Dead. It's like they finally have a safe haven since the prison.
Right. Even though this season was only 16 episodes long, it definitely, like, it started at a high point, went down, started to come back up. And for me, it kind of plateaued to the end of the season. But that's just my personal opinion.
I think once they got to Alexandria, I think this season got really good.
Mm-hmm.
Where it becomes one of my favorite seasons. So I just love them getting to Alexandria and how different the dynamic of all of it changes. Where it's like it's less so like this big epic war, or like survival. It's just like trying to adapt again to how the world used to be, but yet still understand how the world is. And that whole dynamic between like those who have barely experienced the world on the outside of these gates, and this group that has been through living hell since the beginning. And then how Rick is able to climb his way up the ranks to become almost like the leader of this community, just like that. Even though they were about to kick him out, they're like, all right, Pete just killed one of our favorite people. Rick might have a lot of stuff we got to listen to. So,
yeah.
Oh yeah, Span. So is that the episode? I'm trying to remember what happens in that episode, because I know that's 2 episodes from the finale. But yeah, favorite new character is Aaron.
That's when yeah. Oh no, never mind. I'm thinking of something different. Continue.
Anyway, but yeah, I agree. Aaron's definitely probably my favorite of the new characters, because there weren't a ton. I mean, there were a ton of new characters that got introduced, right? But yeah, okay. So that was the Noah death episode. Great episode. Unreal episode. But Aaron's definitely like, and he's still on the show to this day. Phenomenal character. I'm trying to think about who else was new. I mean, Jesse was an all right new addition. But yeah, Aaron was definitely like the fan favorite new character to come out. But yeah, well, Bob, I think that's about it. Want to tell me your favorite episode from season 5?
I'd have to say the opening episode. I mean,
No Sanctuary.
There's no Sanctuary. You can't, honestly, just with all that action that happened and Carol coming back to be a part of the group, finding that reuniting moment between Rick, Carl, and Judith. It's just heartwarming. I think that has to be my favorite, and my least favorite would have to be somewhere in that the Beth storyline.
I would agree. There completely.
But my favorite new character would definitely have to be Aaron.
But I will say I do love Gabe. Eventually.
Gabe is a great character.
From the get go, I always liked, but I didn't like Gabe for a while.
No.
Yeah, season 5 kicks ass. So I guess we are up to season 5 of The Walking Dead. For next week, we're going to talk about season 6, 7, and 8, which is definitely going to hammer the rest of the beginning of the Alexandria arc, which ends with No Way Out, which I think is one of the best episodes of the entire show. And then that starts a new chapter of the Saviors and the war with the Saviors. So we're going to go through that entire arc next week. Bob, you're more than welcome to come back. I loved having you.
Just let me know, man.
Harris, you were a bit late to the party, but I'm happy to have you here, pal. We're about 2 hours in almost. But Beth death episode. Beth died so Daryl could thrive.
Yeah, hope that your backyard's fine, man.
Oh yeah. Oh shoot, man. Yeah, I hope so too, Harris. I'm sorry that your backyard flooded. Holy cow. But no, just glad you came in eventually. All right, guys. So what I want to ask you, out of all the seasons, which one's your favorite and which one's your least favorite? And who is your favorite character up to this point, not named Rick Grimes? Because Rick is clearly the best character in the show and arguably in all of fiction, in my personal opinion. But Bob, let's hear your ranking of the first 5 seasons real quick before we call it out.
All right, so I'd have to put season 4 at the number 1 spot for now.
I respect.
Followed by season 5, followed by season 1, followed by season 3 and 2.
Okay. For me, it's hard between 4 and 5 for me. It really is, because I really love the highs of season 5, like specifically with the Alexandria arc. Like once they get to Alexandria, I'm like, this is like this is like my favorite show. And then we also get like, of course, the No Sanctuary and like the whole arc with like the cannibals and whatnot is great. The termites, right? So season 5 probably is my favorite, but season 4 I love because of course I love the whole separation arc. I love Too Far Gone, and I love where we get to see Rick go fully feral. Like that, those are highlights to me. But I think overall, I like season 5 more. So 5 is 1. I think 4 is 2. Season 2 is 3. Then season 3 is my number 4 spot, and then season 1 is my last spot. But again, I think seasons 1 through 6, I think is where the show is perfection, almost like without a doubt. Like that those are the seasons I can consistently watch. As much I still enjoy like the rest of the show, don't get me wrong, but that's where it starts to get a little harder to like binge watch the show. But Bob, I loved having you here again. If you want to come in next week, talk the Savior arc with me, you're more than welcome. Because I know.
Thanks for having me. You know I love talking about The Walking Dead.
Of course. Let's see. So 5, 4, 2, 3, 1. David, we have the same list, brother. But Daryl's your favorite, not named Rick. Okay, I respect it. For me, my favorite character, not named Rick. Ooh, I love Daryl, but I don't think I start to really love Daryl until Rick is gone. I mean, I always love Daryl. Don't get me wrong. But I think once Rick's gone, he becomes like a leading man. I think he becomes a much better character.
Oh my God, I remember so many people would always say, if Daryl dies, we riot.
Yeah.
Like that saying that's going on.
I love Daryl.
Speaking of that, have you watched any of the Daryl season or the Daryl show yet?
Not yet. We're on episode 8 of season 11, so we have 16 more episodes to watch. And we're done with the show itself. And I think we're gonna watch Daryl, and I'm hoping we're done with that by the time Rick comes out.
Okay.
I'll probably go back and watch Dead City eventually.
Honestly, I've only seen the first episode of both of them because, short for money, can't get the rest of it right now. But I honestly thought the first episode of Dead City was a lot better than the first episode of Daryl. That's not saying that either of them are bad. I enjoyed the first episode of both very much.
Okay, cool. So what I'm kind of thinking, if we're not done with so of course we're going to watch Rick Grimes together, right?
Of course.
So what I'm hoping we do is maybe we watch that. It's one episode, and maybe we can watch at least one episode of like either Dead City or Daryl after each one. You know,
I mean, I could probably be down for that.
We'll figure it out. But yeah, all right, guys. I think that's gonna. Well, what did Harris say before we could log out?
Yeah, if Daryl dies, we riot.
I know Carl dying was a lot of like the dropping off points for a lot of people, but we'll get to that when we talk about it next week. But arguably, I think the show, it was just in a bad spot at that point in time. But then once we get to season 9, I think the show really starts to get really good again. Even though I don't think season 7 or 8 are that bad, I do think they are like the weakest seasons of the entire show. But
yeah. I still really like even those parts of the seasons because there's a lot of like character development that goes on through a lot of the characters. For sure. And I do really like seeing a lot of that.
Right. We'll talk about a lot of that character development next week. All right, guys, make sure to like and subscribe. Leave in the comments down below what are some of your favorite scenes from each season. And just give me your highlights because, I mean, to me, this is my favorite show of all time. And, of course, I can talk about it all day and night. But, all right, guys, make sure to like and subscribe. Bob, thanks for coming in.
Don't forget to hit that bell.
Oh, yeah. Turn on that bell for notifications. And, and I'll catch y'all very soon. Bye-bye.